We know that we'll probably sound like manifestations of the old man yelling at the cloud meme when we say that they just don't make them like they used to when it comes to gory anime. Though there's no dearth of bloody spectacle in the current era of anime, things were just different back in the 2000s. Perhaps it was because anime was still more of a cult thing, or maybe it was just that things were more bizarre back then. In any case, the horror from this period really works. Thus, to honor that strange, visceral, and completely bonkers period, we'll be listing out the top 10 bloodiest and most bizarre OVAs from the 2000s. To begin the carnage, please make sure that you hit those like and subscribe buttons really hard. Now, without further ado, let's get into things. Elfen Lied, 2004. Only an individual from the 2000s can truly understand how shocking and mesmerizing the opening sequence to Elfen Lied was back in 2004. This curious blend of psychological horror and science fiction was created by Lin Okamoto in his manga and later adapted into a 13-episode OVA by director Mamoru Kanbei. The saga begins with one of the most violent sequences in all of anime, as Lucy, a member of the mutant species known as the Diclonius, tears through helpless human guards using her invisible telekinetic vector arms. Though she makes it out of the government facility, Lucy is unfortunately wounded during her fight and ends up developing a good old split personality. Under normal circumstances, she's the innocent Miu, but when push comes to shove, she instantly turns into the hyper-violent Lucy. She's taken in by university student Cotte and his cousin Yuka, and for the first time in her life, Lucy begins to experience something like peace. But as the story progresses, the poor mutant's past comes back to haunt her, and a mysterious connection emerges between Lucy and Cotte's traumatic past. The story soon turns into a tragedy that delves into themes like vengeance, betrayal, and love. However, please be warned. This saga contains some of the most emotionally jarring scenes of all time, along with a bunch of gore and nudity, which might trigger some of you. But for those of you who are here for the weird stuff, Elfen Lied is a goldmine. Ichi the Killer, Episode 0, 2002. When it comes to the violent and bizarre, true cinephiles consider Takashi Miike to be a mad genius. Though Ichi the Killer started out as a manga by Hideo Yamamoto, it was only when Takashi Miike adopted the story into a live-action film that it gained global recognition and a place in pop culture history. Miike's film is a true celebration about everything violent and strange, so we were really hyped when we found Ichi the Killer, Episode 0, an OVA released in 2002, which serves as the prequel to the infamous 2001 film. This 50-minute-long film explores the dark origins of one of the most twisted characters ever created, the titular Ichi. This is a deep dive into Ichi's traumatic childhood, which is marked by intense bullying, isolation, and psychological manipulation. When this troubled youngster comes under the control of a shadowy figure named Gigi, Ichi is brainwashed into believing that the violence he enacts upon the world is in fact justice. Ichi isn't a traditional anti-hero. There's literally nothing likable about this deeply disturbed individual whose only drive is his repressed rage and sexual confusion. The anime depicts Ichi's brutal world through gritty visuals that perfectly accompany the unholy content of this anime. Though brutal and bloody, this film is actually a critical study of Ichi's violent mind. Whether you've watched Miike's film or not, Ichi Episode 0 is definitely a unique and disgusting experience that has stood the test of time. Shiguri Death Frenzy, 2007. This brutal and atmospheric take on the samurai genre, produced by Madhouse and based on Takayuki Yamaguchi's manga, is definitely one of the most unique we've seen in years. This meticulously paced tale unfolds in 17th century Japan during the early years of the Edo period. The tale is built on a simple yet shocking premise. A shogun demands a traditional sword duel to the death using a real blade instead of a wooden one. Thus, two swordsmen are selected as participants, the one-armed Fujiki Genosuke and the blind Irako Seigen. This simple battle turns out to be an epic clash that is actually rooted in decades of obsession, rivalry, and honor. This story soon dives deep into the tragic backstories of the two participants, as well as the utter depravity they both experienced at the hands of their shared master, Kogen Iwamoto. It encompasses everything from physical mutilation to psychological torment, making it an especially difficult series to watch. At the core of the extravagant violence and the immaculate imagery is a grim portrait of Bishiod, not in the form of noble idealism, but as a path that leads souls towards suffering and madness. If you're a fan of brooding samurai tearing each other to shreds, this one's definitely for you. Higurashi, When They Cry, OVA Arcs, 2007 to 2009. The Higurashi When They Cry OVAs are an extension of the original psychological series that unveils a whole new level of character exploration and visceral violence. These OVAs essentially contain 3 installments, Rei, Kira, and Outbreak, released in 2009, 2011, and 2013 respectively. However, the one that we're most fascinated by is the 5-episode arc, Rei, which ran from 2007 to 2009. This is a storyline that dives deep into alternate realities and their consequences following the traumatic events depicted in the main series. The most disturbing of all these arcs is known as the Saikoroshi Hen, a dark, introspective tale in which Rika is teleported to a world where all her friends have completely changed personalities, with all her sacrifices from the past rendered meaningless. This might just be the most poignant exploration of how much escaping can cost someone. The other episodes are far more comedic, but Saikoroshi stands out for being an eerily consistent return to form for the Higurashi franchise, and that's exactly what he has wanted all along. Aman, Apocalypse of Devilman, 2000. Aman, Apocalypse of the Devilman has such a bleak and nihilistic view of the world that it'll push you into a deep existential crisis. This ultra-violent OVA from 2000 reimagines the final chapters of Go Nagai's iconic manga with a tone that can only be described as apocalyptic. I guess that's why they put it in the title. After the death of his beloved Miki, Akira entirely loses control of his human side and undergoes a full transformation to become Aman. This primal, unrestrained demon grows into a separate entity inside him. Meanwhile, the world outside is going through a similar struggle as its inhabitants turn on each other in a frenzy of fear and bloodlust. This reflects Akira's internal struggles and allows the saga to explore humanity's boundless capacity for cruelty. The OVA depicts a series of harrowing events like mass hysteria, mob violence, lynching, and sadistic violence. It never flinches and lets us see the utter depravity of mankind in all its glory. The art style grows increasingly grotesque as the series progresses, and honestly, this one's a must-watch for any horror fan, even if you don't like the anime. Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust, 2000. This visually stunning gothic horror anime is the brainchild of Yoshiaki Kawajiri, and it features some excellent retro animation by Madhouse. Based on Hideyuki Kikuchi's Vampire Hunter D novels, this series might just be one of the most easily recognizable franchises on this list, but that doesn't stop Bloodlust from becoming a genuine spectacle of gore and violence. The film follows the plot of Demon Death Chase, with the Dhampir D once again journeying across the wasteland to take on the remnants of the once powerful vampire aristocracy. In this occasion, D is hired to rescue the daughter of a nobleman who has apparently been kidnapped by the vampire Meyer Link. Throughout the story, D pursues the pair from one stunning post-apocalyptic landscape to another, laying waste to Meyer's powerful guardians and other bounty hunters along the way. The story blends together a vast range of genres, from horror to science fiction, often using its moody orchestral score to create a mood similar to old gothic horror films. However, be warned, the story can get pretty hardcore at a moment's notice, which is why it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Blue Gender, The Warrior, 2002 OVA movie. Blue Gender The Warrior is an OVA that serves as a condensed version of the Blue Gender anime series. Once again, the story unfolds in a hopeless and bleak dystopia where Yuji Kaido, a young man, awakens from a very long cryogenic sleep to find out that man is no longer the ruler of planet Earth. Instead, Earth has been taken over by monstrous insectoid aliens known as Blue, who have pushed mankind to the very brink of extinction. Yuji finds a companion in Marlene Angel, a hardened soldier who is undertaking a perilous journey through the ravaged wasteland to make her way to the much more habitable Second Earth. Along the way, Yuji constantly witnesses the horror of war, as well as the dehumanizing effect it has on even the toughest amongst us. The film reimagines various key events from the TV series by placing much greater emphasis on the action. Though some might suggest that this cuts down on the solid character development and surprising philosophical depth of the originals, sometimes one just wants to watch things go boom. The OVA is definitely a visceral experience that deserves a position on this list. Kaku Renbo, Hide and Seek, 2004. Though Kaku Renbo is just a short film that's 25 minutes long, it manages to generate a chilling atmosphere that many horror films fail to do, even with twice the runtime. This story takes place in an abandoned city where children are forced to play a forbidden game of hide and seek known as Otokoyo, but the only problem is that the participants never return. The story is rendered completely in a unique cel-shaded CGI style, which grants the shadows an unreal amount of depth and texture. The style perfectly complements the twisted tale, which centers on a masked boy, Ekora, who is forced to enter the game after his sister goes missing. Alongside many other masked children, he makes his way through a nightmarish labyrinth where the only sources of light are flickering lanterns. The kids are also stalked by demonic entities who continue to hunt the participants down one by one. The unsettling visuals and intriguing sound design in this OVA are far ahead of their time and focus on atmosphere rather than just cheap jump scares. At its heart, the story is an allegory about urban alienation, lost innocence, and the consequences of neglect, which make this strange OVA a must-watch for horror fans. Le Portrait de Petit Cotte, 2004. This gothic horror OVA, directed by Akiyuki Shinbo, lasts just 3 episodes, but manages to tell a haunting tale of obsession, guilt, and redemption. The protagonist of this saga is Iri Kurahashi, an art student working in an antique shop who becomes strangely mesmerized by a mysterious girl named Cotte, who has been magically trapped inside an antique glass goblet. But as Iri gazes into the glass, he comes to realize that Cotte is actually the spirit of a young girl murdered centuries ago by a man who closely resembles Iri. This strange predicament leads Iri to develop feelings of guilt for a crime he never committed, and despite his innocence, Iri agrees to undergo torment and punishment in order to atone for his sins. This is a simple story that spirals into an extremely disturbing romance that'll leave you questioning the very idea of love and obsession. Pet Shop of Horrors, Tokyo, 2005. This OVA from 2005 serves as the spiritual successor to the original Pet Shop of Horrors OVA, which is based on the manga by Matsuri Akino. The tale follows Count D, the mysterious and elusive owner of a pet shop in Tokyo's Chinatown. However, this is no ordinary pet story and actually offers access to otherworldly creatures that match the deepest desires of its customers. But each pet often comes with a strict contract, and when the terms are broken, the consequences are more brutal than anything you can even imagine. Honorable mentions: Helsing Ultimate, 2006 to 2009 OVA series. Helsing Ultimate definitely deserves to be on this list, but come on, we've explored this masterpiece enough in our other videos. This story follows Alucard, an immortal and sadistic vampire who revels in enacting the most severe acts of violence on his enemies. The only individual that Alucard can be controlled by is the cold and calculating Integra Helsing, whose Helsing organization is the last line of defense between England and the supernatural forces of evil. This one's a classic that just can't be missed. The Garden of Sinners, Kara no Kyokai, 2007 to 2009 OVA movies. This cerebral story is set in a haunting urban twilight world where each OVA film explores a world of murder, suicide, spirits, and fractured identities. The protagonist is Shiki Ryogi, a stoic young woman who is endowed with the mystic eyes of death perception, a supernatural ability that allows her to see and sever the lines of mortality in all things. Throughout the saga, Shiki grapples with the duality of her being, struggling against her human and otherworldly nature. This is an intense exploration of the metaphysical dilemmas that arise when one is in possession of such an overpowered ability that definitely deserves more love. Marvelous Verdict! This list is a testament to the fact that the 2000s were a very weird period. Not only are these far more intense than many of the so-called adult animes we see today, they also explore a variety of serious psychological conflicts that can force anyone into a deep abyss of existential crisis. But what do you think? Are there any animes that we missed or that you'd have liked to have seen here? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our marvelous content. Goodbye for now, but we'll catch you in the next one real soon.